And we are ready. Give me just a second for me to share the presentation with you.
It's perfect now.
Yeah, just presentation mode. Okay, everybody sees the presentation? I hope so. Okay, so as Claudia said, we just did our introductions. We worked for WooCompra for about 7 years, specialize in payments. And today, what we hope from this webinar is to teach you a little bit, educate you a little bit on the Brazilian payment market, because it's a tricky one, such as Latin America in general. And we hope we can help you enter that market the best possible way, okay? Guys, sorry, give me just a second. See, things never work as well as we expect. Okay, now here we go. So what you should know before you start processing in Brazil. So just to give you some key facts on Brazil, we have a huge population, as I'm aware, most of you know, around 211 million people. With actually a low average age, 32 years, just to give you an idea. In Europe is around 43. The e-commerce value, market value in Brazil is quite high, 23.8 billion, with a mobile commerce market size of 7.6 billion and a 70% of internet penetration, 37% smartphone penetration. Now, is a very important number, 70% of the population, so 70% of bank account penetration. What does this mean? This means that only 70% of the population in Brazil have access to a bank account. This means that 1 out of every 3 Brazilians don't have access to a bank account whatsoever. So this means obviously they don't have a credit or a debit card or anything related to products that a bank offers. And this is important because when I explain to you a bit more about how payment methods work in Brazil, this is a very important information that 30% of the population doesn't have access to a bank account. We have 2.23 card penetration per capita and over 58 million online shoppers. Regarding the e-commerce, we have some pros and cons, obviously. The pros are that Brazil is a super booming market, okay, is the biggest market in Latin America, one of the most developed ones with a 42% market share, is the strongest cross-border consumer market in Latin America, with actually low returns, 15.6, while the average is 27.5, sorry. It's also the largest and fastest growing e-commerce market. But of course, if you want to succeed in Brazil, if you want to succeed operating in Brazil, you need to offer local payment methods. And this is the key for the success there, okay? I will explain to you what local payment methods are. What are the cons of operating in Brazil? Basically, the cons are not related to the economy itself or the number of people living there. The cons are related to the super complicated tax situation that we have in Brazil. Financial regulation is a mess. Just for you to have an idea, in order for you to operate in Brazil, you either have a local entity, which is super hard to get, okay, or you need to find another way to get your local payment method, and it's super complicated legislation, everything. So your best way, I will explain further ahead what is the best option for you to work in Brazil. Just to give you an idea, so this is the entire Latin American market, okay? Brazil holds a 42% share, okay? The second biggest is Mexico with 18%. So as you can see, this is the market to be in when you want to operate in Latin America. Regarding the e-commerce trend, as I said in the beginning, Brazil is a super booming market, okay? It has been booming for years, for the last 10 years at least. And it will carry on booming in the future, even despite this COVID crisis that's affecting the entire world. We personally, as a company, don't feel that, quite the opposite, okay? Our numbers are growing by the minute, it's insane. So e-commerce in Brazil will carry on growing. Maybe because people spend more time at home and they need internet. I don't know, but it's growing and growing and growing. Just for you, just some keynotes to give you an idea. The sales in Brazil should reach $24.6 billion by 2020, which represents an 80% growth regarding last year. The average ticket for online sales around $72, 342 million orders placed by approximately 68 million consumers. It's a lot. Marketplaces are still the main driver for the e-commerce. Smartphones start to dig in and represent already 37% of all e-commerce transactions. We expect by the end of 2020 that Brazil should have around 135K e-commerce businesses. And if all the expectations are confirmed, Brazil will reach the mark by the end of the year of 100 billion reais. Okay, so that's more or less $23 billion. And the country is set to exceed 130 million digital buyers in 2020. And if you see from the graph that I had there, so basically the consumer spending is just increasing since 2017. The graph here is until 2019, but it will carry on rising for years to come. Just to give you an idea of the top e-commerce merchant segments, okay, consumer electronics still hold the biggest share here, right after we have travel. And on others, we can include here video games that are booming in Brazil, and people spend a lot of money in video games. And then you have all the rest there, just to give you an idea, depending on your market and on your product, exactly where you will fit there, okay? Now, I explained to you that the Brazilian market is booming, that it's an interesting market, that you should invest there. I also told you it's difficult to invest. So how exactly can you do this in a way that you will succeed? Basically, it's what we want at the end. So to explain this to you a bit better, the keynote is local payment methods, okay? Why do I say local payment methods? Because Brazil and Latin America in general, they work in a different way than Europe or the US, okay? For us in Europe or in the US, it's super common when we shop online to use credit cards, what we call international credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, okay? This is not the case in Brazil. So in Brazil, only 20% of the population have access to international credit cards, okay? And this number here makes all the difference because you're cutting out 80% of the market, okay? Just with the credit cards alone. So what happens in Brazil is Visa and MasterCard, they have this special agreement, and they have local Visa and local MasterCard that only operate in Brazil and only work in Brazil, okay? So this is, as you can see from the graph there, the top payment method in Brazil are cards, credit cards, exactly because of this reason, okay? But these are the local ones. So if you already have Visa and MasterCard, but they are international, well, you can still have some traction in Brazil and some numbers, but you are missing out 80% of the market. And as I explained here, also some wallets, people are in Europe and in the US are really used to PayPal wallets. We also have our specific wallets in Brazil, also PayPal wallets able to pay with the Brazilian reais. And then when I said in the beginning that 70% of the population only has access, only 70% of the population has access to a bank account, I told you this would be important. Why? Because this 30% of the population that don't have access to a bank account have a way to pay, okay? Some of you probably already know this. The cash payment method that we use in Brazil is called boleto, okay? And this reaches this 30% that cannot use a credit card. So yes, it's possible for a person without a bank account to pay for an item online in Brazil, okay? They just need to use boleto. And as you can see here in the graph, boleto is cash and it represents 23% of all the transactions. So credit cards and boleto are the go-to payment methods, local payment methods that you really must have. So yes, these local payment methods play a vital role when you want to succeed in the Brazilian e-commerce market. Claudia will explain them in detail, okay, exactly how they work. Something very interesting that Brazil has is installments. Of course, everybody knows installments, and we usually know how it works, but we are used to paying using installments for goods that are very expensive, okay? Your car, fridge, I don't know, something like this. In Brazil, it doesn't work that way. People pay using installments, even if you buy a pair of shoes, some clothes, okay? So it's super common in Latin America in general. So yes, you should offer installments along with your local payment methods to get the most out of the markets. If you don't have a local operation, how can you do this? How can you open these payment methods? Well, you can be connected to a payment gateway or an acquirer, okay? Either one will give you access to the local payment methods, easy way, and you will be able to operate in that market. Just a last tip here. It's not easy shipping things into Brazil. We have, of course, a lot of taxes. So a local partner is also recommended if you want to ship physical goods. So as I mentioned, for you to have local payment methods, you need to be connected to a payment gateway or an acquirer. So here I explain, if you don't know exactly what they are, I explain here what they are and the difference. Basically, a payment gateway sends data, receives responses to check whether the transactions or the payments were approved or not. So they basically act as a terminal, okay? While an acquirer specializes in processing payments, enables all the conditions that the customer needs to approve the payment, processes it, passes it to the card bank, and is responsible for transferring the values to the final user. And just to give you an idea of how complicated the situation in Brazil is regarding credit cards, this is a scheme, okay, of how one transaction can work. I will explain it. I will not go into a lot of detail, just to give you a general idea. So we have the customer, which is the user. We have the merchant, which is your online store. And then you have two options here. You either connect to the payment gateway that then connects to the acquirer, or you can go to the acquirer directly, okay? This is totally up to you. Then the acquirer will contact with the card brand with the issuing bank, and then it all goes back up to the customer for the transaction using credit cards to be approved. Of course, it seems super complicated here, and it seems that it's going to take a lot of time. Of course, it doesn't take, it's just a few seconds, but just for you to have an idea of how many steps you have in the middle just to get one transaction approved, okay? Just for you to really understand how complicated and tricky this market is. So what are the advantages of working directly with an acquirer or a payment gateway? Well, from the merchant perspective, obviously your conversion will increase, okay, immediately, because if you offer the local payment methods, people will pay using them, like the majority of the population. Obviously, increasing of sales volume, reduction in shopping cart abandonment. Why? Because if I'm a customer and I try to buy something online, and I go online and I try to pay using a payment method that I don't have, such as international Visa and MasterCard, I will abandon the card because I have no way to pay. Whereas if I have payment methods that I can use, of course, you can proceed with your purchase. Users pay using their own currency. This is also something very important that Claudia will explain why, but people still relate, obviously. They relate to the store. You can have access to cash payments like boleto, as I mentioned before, as well as all the other local payment methods. You have full control of the transactions via a personal cabinet, enhanced security, positive reputation association, because people, this is word of mouth, okay? People start talking about this company or that company that accepts boleto and local credit cards. And then you get a positive reputation because you are there, you know the market, you are working for those people. It's easier, more transparent, easy setup. Usually the integration is pretty straightforward. One integration covers a lot of markets, so no problems there. You get the settlement in USD or euros. You have companies that have other currencies, but usually the most common ones is USD or euros. All the companies who process are PCI compliance. This is very important to avoid any fraud. And of course, the best one for the merchant is that you can sit quietly and comfortable in your own country. You don't need to leave the country in order to collect payments from other countries, okay? And this is one of the biggest advantages, obviously. From the end user, the advantages: simplicity of payments. Obviously, you go there, you know the payments, you pay, that's it. It's convenient because you know these payment methods, they are convenient for you. The merchant, the end user immediately feels that sense of familiarity and convenience with the payment method because it's something they know, it's an environment they know. So obviously they trust this environment and they immediately feel included, okay? They feel included in your company because especially if it's like an international company that didn't accept local payment methods before, when users go there and see that now they can actually pay using those payment methods, they feel included and they feel empowered. Okay, it's very important to give this feeling to the end user. Easier, more transparent, and PCI compliant, obviously. So just to give you a wrap up, I know that it's a lot of information, especially if you don't know the market, but basically the keywords are invest in Brazil and use local payment methods, okay? Now Claudia will take over to explain a bit better how the payment methods work in detail.
Exactly, and thank you, Francisca. So it's Claudia here again, and exactly the key point and what I want to work with you in the second part of this webinar is that importance of local payment methods and exactly what those options are. So if you can move to the next slide, Francisca. There is one thing that we cannot bypass. We need to keep in mind that Brazil is the ninth largest economy in the world. But as Francisco already said, its payment ecosystem is considerably different from what we are used to seeing either in the US or in Europe. And therefore, it is key to localize your store. If you might have a brilliant setup and you can have an amazing setup with your prices in USD and with your international credit cards, and that works just fine for you. But if you think that you can just grab that and simply apply it to Brazil without making any change, then you are going to be surprised. And we are going to look in each specific payment method exactly why that would be a mistake. But in the next slide, I'm going to, sorry, I didn't want you to change yet, just because, yes, localizing and exactly how to localize, it's important. But keep in mind, we are talking about e-commerce. So making your website mobile friendly, or even going as further as creating an app can make all the difference to your business. It's important to keep in mind, and even, for example, this COVID situation led to many companies feeling the need to create an app, to go to digital, to be able to sell digitally. And in Brazil, this is not only a reality, but, and now I ask you to change the slide, please, but especially because it's important to build that trust, to make sure the end user is going to move each and every single step and in the end make that payment. First of all, it's important that you are showing those local payment methods. And we are talking about boleto bancário that, as mentioned, is a success case, is a case study. It's the most used cash payment option in Brazil. We are obviously talking about credit cards, but specifically about local credit cards. We can never forget bank transfer and cash deposit, and obviously e-wallets. If we're talking about e-commerce and we are talking about e-commerce growing, of course, e-wallets are also becoming more and more popular. But keep this in mind. If you want to succeed, if you want to tackle the beast, if you want to tackle the biggest Latam market, you need to set your price points. You need to be sure that the price point is adapted to the reality of that country and to the buying power of your target audience. Also, it's extremely important that you show Brazilian reais and not, for example, USD. Localize also to local currency. And a key factor that you cannot bypass, you cannot forget to localize into Brazilian Portuguese. Especially when you're talking about payments, it's important that when you see online that product that you really want to buy and you go ahead, you go to the checkout, you are starting to decide if you are going to use your card or you're going to use a boleto, it's important to feel that trust And that is also represented by the fact that you are seeing a properly translated, not a Google translated, a properly translated to Brazilian Portuguese, so that you feel safe. You are seeing a payment method that you are used to see everywhere, and you feel confident and you go ahead. But let's look at those into detail. Let's look first at boleto bancário. Francisca, if you can change, thank you so much. So as said, just a little less than a third of the population. So let's read this the other way around. Almost a third of the Brazilian population is unbanked. Those people do not have a bank account, and it's not so easy to reach them. But that hasn't stopped them from purchasing online. And here enters the phenomenon boleto bancário. Boleto is a kind of a payment split. We will show you exactly how to process it, how it works. And this is by far the most common cash-based payment method that is operating in the country. This makes up for 90% of all online purchases. So, unsurprisingly, it's hugely popular also with e-commerce merchants, and this is the way to broaden your customer base considerably. You will be able to reach every user if you are making sure to also have boleto bancário available. Right now, this payment method is used for more than 2 billion financial operations. This is huge in Brazil. Boletos are issued by banks and they are liquidated within the interbanking compensating system. What's very curious about this is that although there are several brandings that can be found in the market, the system itself, the system for processing a boleto is unique and is asynchronous. Let's see exactly how it works. If Francisca can please change the slide. How does this work? We have chosen, this is one example because of course we had to put something in the presentation. We have chosen to show you our hosted version of our checkout. What do I mean by this? You can adapt your checkout page to look exactly as you want. You can, for example, use an API, and this is going to be transparent for the end user. Your customer won't even understand that it's a different entity that it's processing its payment. In this case, we are giving you the example with the hosted version. So the user leaves your page after choosing to pay with a boleto and is redirected to a BoaCompra environment, which is exactly the one you see right now on your screen. And this is where the payment step by step is going to happen. So to generate a boleto, right next to the resume of the order, you are asked to fill in a couple of personal information. Namely, we will need your name, your birthday, and your ID, which in Brazil is your CPF. And then when you click on finish purchase, and when Francisca clicks to change the slide, you will see exactly what happens and what a boleto is. On the right side of your screen, you can now see a boleto. It is basically a code. And that is why it is so simple for someone that doesn't have a bank account to be able to actually use it. So this document that is generated, this is a boleto. It can be paid at any cash point, any ATM, a bank branch, or online bank, as well as any authorized processor, such as a post office, a lottery agent, a supermarket. This is why it's so brilliant. That code that you see in the beginning of the boleto, in the first box, you see a code, you see a number. If you don't have a bank account, you quite simply, you just need to write that number on a piece of paper, you go to the supermarket and you can pay it there. And there it is. You have reached all the unbanked population. You don't need to have a bank account to be able to purchase online. Of course, you can also do it online. You can immediately be redirected to your home banking and you immediately liquidate your boleto. You can even use the barcode that you see on the bottom of the boleto. So in the end, this is an online and offline payment method whose delivery time, exactly because of the offline possibility, is never more than 2 working days. And this is the main reason why this very specific ecosystem, this very specific way that Brazilians have to deal with their payments is so different than what, for example, we would know in the US or in Europe. Boleto is the best example. The second best example are credit cards, exactly because of what Francisca explained. Because in Brazil, you have local credit cards. But let's look into it with a little bit of detail. So if we go back to 2009, when none of us ever thought we would live through this pandemic, credit, debit, and prepaid cards, they made up for only 19% of online sales in Brazil. Brazil, like many other Latin countries, was for its vast majority using cash payment methods still for everything that was online. But if we fast forward, when we look at 2018 data, we see that, and this is information that was released by the Association of Credit Card Companies and Services in Brazil, there's an entirely different story happening right now. Not only do credit cards right now account for 41.5% of online transactions, but they are more used than ever before. And credit card payment increased 14.6% just in 2018. We are talking about credit cards processing $246.1 billion US dollars. So online purchases are growing, and definitely credit cards grew with it. Right now, there are over 110 million active debit cards and over 90 million active credit cards. Francisca, if you can change the slide, we will now look with a tiny bit more detail into the information that you already spoke about, which is the difference of actually having a local or an international credit card. We are not talking about specific brands in Brazil. It's still Visa, it's still MasterCard, but it's local Visa in Brazil, local MasterCard in Brazil. According to our estimate, only 22% of cards that are issued in Brazil are enabled for international transactions. So this means that if you decide to tackle the Brazilian market and you don't offer local credit cards, you are basically missing on 80% of the population that has those credit cards. So there is absolutely no doubt that we are talking a strong market with an exponential growth on e-commerce, and we are definitely talking about the need of having those local credit cards. What's so special about them? All of them are refundable, so every credit card transaction in Brazil is refundable, and installments are truly a phenomenon. They go up to 12 times, so you can choose to have 3, 4, 6, 9, or 12 installments. It is incredibly common in Brazil that the first 3 are interest-free. This is the most common practice. And again, this is just the second time that I'm going to reinforce. You can have these payment options available via API, so in a transparent way where the end user does not see that he's being redirected to a payment provider. We have chosen for this presentation to show you our hosted checkout. So in that sense, this is the landing page when you redirect to Boa, and here is the page to actually process the credit card. Nothing new there. You are asked the number of the card, the expiration date, CVV. Please pay attention to the fact that immediately there you have the installments. So this is one keynote, key aspect, a hint. Show installments all the way through. Tell from the first moment, tell your end user that you have installments available. This is going to make a huge difference to your business. Then the data we need is the name, the birthday, the phone number, and the ID. And this is it. You click finish payment, and as in any other credit card transaction, you've done your payment method. And if Boleto is key, credit card is vital for your operation. But it obviously makes sense to complement and to have a robust offer and to offer as many payment methods from the spectrum as possible. And so if we move to the installments, we will see that it is important to make sure you are reaching everybody and that you are following the trend. And for a significant part of the Brazilian population, installments are a way to increase your purchasing power. This is not necessarily because you are going to have more money, but this is because you are going to be able to do that impulse buy, because you want something, but if you look at your monthly budget, you might think, okay, maybe I can't. But if I can split this in 3 payments with no interest, okay, then I can do it. And as Francisca said, this is not exclusive for high ticket items. It is very common for Brazilians to use installments for day-to-day expenses. Even the smallest expense can be done through sometimes even 12 installments. This is common in Brazil, and this is why you must show it. You must offer this to your consumer. This practice extends, of course, to credit cards, and 56% of credit card users choose to pay them in monthly installments and not to pay the full sum. This is obviously available for credit cards, not for debit. And as said, this is beneficial for both. For the consumer, because it gets a wider purchasing power, but also for the merchants, because this is a way to engage your customer base. Its success, it's so great that we can say that installments are imprinted in the culture, in Brazil's DNA. It is really common. And if there are 3 things that you can and should keep in mind, is boleto, credit cards, installments. Okay, now let's look at the other ones that are, we can say they're not so important or so vital, but this again complements your offer. Online bank transfer. Nothing feels safer than choosing your bank and being redirected to your home page. As you can see there, online bank transfer in Brazil has been changing to meet the increasing shopping demands by providing a wider variety of payment methods. So even on online bank transfer, we see the trend of trying to catch up with the market and make sure that this online offer matches what consumers are expecting from e-commerce. There is nothing very particular to this payment method. You need to gather the name, the birthday, and the ID. You are going to be redirected to your home banking, where you are going to be in your safe environment that you are used to it. You just choose the debit account that you want to pay with, and this is usually a process that is done in less than 8 minutes, and it's really safe, and you feel home. Then you have, this is online. Let's talk about offline. Cash deposit. Again, the major goal of having cash deposit is to make sure that you are offering all the range of payment solutions in the market. With this, you are making sure that you are reaching all the segments of the population. Again, there's a couple of informations that we need to request. This time it's a little bit more. Name, birthday, phone number, address, ID. It's easy to understand why. I can give you an example. If you need to refund a cash payment option, your payment gateway needs to have the necessary information to reach out to that user, because if you want to refund a credit card, you can immediately do it, but this was a cash deposit, so you need a bit more information to be able to get in touch with your end user. What happens here is we gather that information. The consumer is going to receive an email, as you can see on the right side of your screen. Boa Compra bank details are there highlighted in gray. So the information that you need to then go to the bank and make a deposit. And once you've done it, you come back to this email, you click on confirmar depósito ou transferência. So you click on that blue box there, and it's done. And your deposit is done. But as said, we are talking about e-commerce, and of course, hand in hand with e-commerce growing in Brazil, obviously e-wallets grew as well, because it's easy to have your wallet that you are used to, that you top up. Francisca, can you change, please? And then you use your e-wallet for different payments in different pages. So mobile e-commerce is gaining ground in Brazil. It grew 41% in 2018 alone. So it represents right now 42% of total e-commerce. So it's not a surprise that this led to a rise in e-wallets. And as of 2018, e-wallet payments already accounted for 13% of all e-commerce sales. You become used to having your own your wallet, your online wallet that you top up, and then you have your phone on your hand, you want to pay for something, and it's really comfortable to be there and to use that wallet that you know exactly how much you have there, etc., etc. So the increasing mobile adoption rates in Brazil means this trend is likely to increase. We have no doubt about it. We are showing you an example of our hosted version where we ask for some information, name, birthday, phone number, and address. And then, Francisca, if you can please change the slide, you will be redirected to your very familiar wallet. The two most popular digital wallet solutions in Brazil are PagSeguro and PayPal. PagSeguro was a local pioneer in Brazil market because it enabled and focused on fast and low-cost transactions for e-commerce merchants. And therefore, that meant that this PagSeguro wallet grew. And since last year, since March 2019, PagSeguro wallet has turned into a full digital bank account. So it's now PagBank, meaning when you are redirected, you not only have access to that wallet, you are already having access to your digital bank account. And there are several operations that you can do there. PayPal is also very popular in Brazil because by partnering with the local payment platform, PayPal e-wallet can be topped up using those local credit cards. So again, you feel safe, you are using the tools that you are used to, that you know work, and obviously using an e-wallet also brings that sense of comfort to your purchase, and you feel safe during the whole process. So those are basically the major hints that we want to give you in regards to the specific payment methods that you need to pay attention to. And if you want to tackle this market, keep in mind that there's a huge potential. We see everything that's related to e-commerce growing. We see everything that's related to mobile e-commerce grow exponentially. It's vital that you localize your offer, and this means paying attention to your price point, to the currency, to the language, and it's absolutely vital that you are offering the major payment methods in this country. So local credit cards, boleto bancário, don't forget to have those installments for those credit cards, and then complement your offer with e-wallets, but also don't forget online bank transfer and cash deposits, because with this you are being able to reach the full spectrum. You reach the unbanked population, you reach those crazy humans always with a smartphone on their hands, which basically right now it's all of us. And although it has very specific things, it's a very interesting, challenging, but interesting and an amazing market to operate in. And this is what Francisca and I brought to you. And has said, we have left a couple of minutes in the end to answer any question you might have. I don't know if Jason, as said, has anything prepared to us, but we are here and we are available.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Claudia, Francisca. Excellent presentation. There was a lot about Brazil that I did not understand. I feel like I understand a lot better. To the audience, open for questions. We have about 10 minutes. Any questions that you want to direct to Claudia, Francisca? Usually takes a few minutes for the first one to go, and then usually
if you're too shy to ask questions, you have our emails there. You can always send us an email, okay? If it's easier over email.
Yep. Yeah, your emails are here, and then
Yes.
yeah. So if you have any questions that you want to ask them privately, go ahead.
Yeah.
Give it a couple more minutes, and if we don't have any questions, we'll move on. Okay, from Bernardo, what sectors are the most relevant in e-commerce in Brazil?
Well, actually, that was already part of the presentation. So the consumer goods, the electronic goods was actually the first one, like the top one that people buy. And right after it, we had the traveling, okay? So we know that Brazilians like to buy electronics and they like to travel. So nothing against it.
Excellent, excellent. Fantastic. Any other questions from the audience today? From Kwesi, how's the mobile money penetration and its usage in esports? Not sure if that's up your alley, but you guys want to take a crack at that?
Claudia, you want to go ahead?
So I would say, obviously, everything that is moving towards mobile is definitely growing. Not as much as, for example, we see such patterns, for example, in Asia. They are much stronger than in Latam, but that does not mean that this is not a reality and not becoming a reality. To be really honest with you, specifically in regards to esports, I would need to dig a bit further to be able to answer that question.
Excellent. Thank you, Claudia.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else from our audience at all today? If not, we can probably call it a day. I think, again, thank you so much for being here. This was a fantastic presentation, and thank you, Boa Compra, for being a sponsor of this event, Esports in Latin America. To both of you, thank you so much, and hope to have you on one of these again soon in the near future.
Of course, thanks for the opportunity, and keep in touch. If
for,
somebody reaches out to you,
we
we are available.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us, and reach out.
Yes, hope this was helpful for all of you, okay, and for all of your online businesses.
Absolutely. All righty.
Thank you so much.
It was a fantastic presentation, and we will publish the record in the network, so everybody can repeat watching it.
Excellent. All righty.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day. Take care.
Too.
You too.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Take care. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.